Welcome to our final night of the 5-night event of the Core of Our Magic. If you'll give me a few minutes, we'll get everyone on. In the meantime, Miss Shaw's going to play a little more drums and I'm going to play a little more ocarina.
Ocarina.
Thank you and welcome for joining me again. Salute to you. To those we cannot see. And I put out the fire. That's the first time that happened.
You gave them a hell of a drink.
It's red hot. Watch this. So, Welcome. Little technical issue. This is perfect for tonight because of the last thing we're going to talk about, venerating, so it makes perfect sense. So let's start with the Hermetic laws, the final 3 Hermetic laws that we're going to talk about tonight. The first one is the law of compensation. The law of compensation says for everything that we do, we will be compensated. So if we we will be rewarded with gifts and treasures. So if we put forth a good, healthy, helpful life, in other words, helping our fellow man as we help ourselves through this lifetime, we can begin to receive compensation for this. This is a reward. This is why I do all of my consults and all of my readings and all of my classes on donations rather than a set payment. I recognize that through the Hermetic laws, everything has a price. Nothing in this universe is free. But I also recognize that I'm not the one who has to be paid for this knowledge. I can be. And it's easy when I'm the one who's paid. But if you pay it forward, if you share your experiences with someone else and give them new insight, then you're paying it forward, in turn feeding more energy into the universe. Ms. Shaw seems to have a problem.
Making sure that everybody can hear you, because on my screen it says video has no sound.
Video has no sound. Well, go see.
That's what I was saying.
Everyone's saying there isn't a problem.
Okay.
So, the next law we're going to talk about is the law of correspondence. So last night we talked about the Ve, that sacred space that we create in our mind. That's the above space. We're in the below space. So the law of correspondence says what we experience there has a direct effect to what we experience here, and vice versa. So if we go there and we do an experiment, technically, if we're good at it, and Miss Shaw is one of these people who's really good at it, when she comes back here, the work's technically done. Now she just has to go through the motions. And going through the motions doesn't change anything, but it validates that, yes, this is what we want. This is where we're going. Right? And so that's super important. And boy, I went really dark tonight, didn't I? It's all right. It'll work out. The final law, and to me, one of the most important ones, and probably one of the most important because out of all the workers that I help, and all the practitioners and all the magic people who are struggling with their magic, this is the one they fail to recognize probably 90% of the time. And that's the law of action. The law of action states that nothing can manifest or come to be if we do not take physical action to make it happen. This is what all of those people in those chat groups and on Facebook talk about when they say, did you do the mundane? Because what they're really saying is, did you take action? Did you put this in motion physically here in the real world? Did you take care of the easiest part? I had a client today who did a working a couple weeks ago, and she's not seeing any results. And I asked her, so what did you put in place to make this happen? Well, nothing. It should just work. No, you have to take action. So, the final Hermetic law, to me, is the cornerstone in our society of failure, because we so much have been indoctrinated with this idea that I don't have to do anything. But you do. If you don't take action, Nothing that you think of, fantasize about, do in your vey, do on your table or your altar, none of that'll happen if you don't take action. The final part of self that we're going to talk about. The 10th part of self is our individual magic power. I've worked with a lot of people over the years, a lot of different ages, and I think I've heard it somewhere, but it's been proven to me pretty solid. Somewhere around the age of 33, we become fully enveloped by our magical power, whatever that's going to be. Now, we don't know how to use it at 33, but we now have it all. None of the pieces are missing. They're all present. And somewhere around 11 years after that, we have mastered all the ones we're actually going to master. So, in a way, you've got an 11-year window that gives you the time to learn all of your magical power. And you can't start until you're in your early 30s. This is why in tribal cultures, an elder was somebody who was closer to being a grandparent than a parent. Sometimes even a great-grandparent. Because in our 30s, we're still learning about ourselves and about our reality. So how could we possibly be an elder to a tribe when we don't even know who the hell we are yet? And it's easy to parrot information that isn't yours. It leads to spiritual bypass, which is equivalent to performing open heart surgery after watching a YouTube video with no anatomy experience. So that's how fast something can go wrong. That's what spiritual bypass is. That's what happens when we parrot someone else's ideas about the magical world, rather than discover our own gnosis, our own awareness of magic and the force that exists within us. So, taking those 4 meditations, the mindfulness, the 4-4-4 breathing, leading into the mindfulness, so that we can get rid of our mundane, everyday thoughts that we need to function. Using the Wim Hof breathing technique to lead us into an awareness meditation, which heightens our senses, perhaps leading us to even more than 6 senses, possibly 18 to 24. As we grow, this becomes more powerful, more prevalent, and more important in our reality. Exercising our will with the 3rd meditation, the discipline meditation, creating that dot and holding it in our reality for as long as we possibly can, for whatever's going on. And then taking all this knowledge and skills and creating a space, your personal sacred space in your vey, your secret space, that nothing can control but you, and you get to play in it, where you can talk to your ancestors, have an altar, have a library for study, a dojo for learning how to fight. These are all things that build you so that you have the perfect above space, so that you can create the perfect below space. This is how critical it can be for you. Veneration. We didn't talk about veneration last night, but there is a 4th thing to venerate. And that's that primordial energies. Chaos, wind, fire, flood. These are things that disrupt the order in our reality, so that we can then take and rebuild that order in the image that we want. So think about it. When we pull these 4 things that we venerate together, self, our ancestors, our ancestral deities, all work together to create and maintain order within our scope of reality. The primordial energy upsets that order so that we can then rebuild the order better. So using these four and venerate all four builds a synchronization that makes it possible for them to all work together in both destruction and restructure for your goals. Because they're talking through you and they're listening through you. When all of these things, the Hermetic laws, the parts of self, the four things that we venerate, when all of these things get in sync and begin to work together, this is when you wake up. This is when you discover who you really are and who you can be. And you discover that you have the control so that now you can be anything. There is no limit. Ironically, we have to do these things. We cannot use a proxy. We cannot use a worker. Workers are stuck with one thing. Wherever you are with these three things is all they have to work with. So if you've completely ignored your ancestral gods, your veneration, then they've got one hand tied behind their back. If you've also ignored or don't understand the Hermetic laws, now they got two hands tied behind their back. So we have to do these if we're going to live in a metaphysical reality. If we're not, then go to work, come home, stare at the television, live a mundane life. And people need to do that too. That's okay. But if you want to live a spiritual life, it starts by harnessing these three things. Our venerations, our four things. Our venerations, the Hermetic laws, the parts of self, and the meditations. When you can harness these four, then you are ready to begin to learn how to use your magic. This is how simple it is. So I encourage you, go read the Kybalion. This week we've done a very wide overview on these subjects. So go read the Kybalion. Decide if it speaks to you the way it needs to, or if you need to search out another source that gives you these principles in another way. Because like I said, the Hermetics aren't the only ones who use these. They just put them in a way that I appreciate and I think is easy to learn from. Look at your parts of self. I use the Old Norse 10 parts of self. The Egyptians have a series. The Hindus have a series. Look at any ancient tribal culture and they've got a series of parts of self that is much broader and deeper than mind, body, and spirit. We covered 10. Mind, body, and spirit is only 3 of those 10. So think about it. Think about how much more information you gain when you recognize that there's more than 3 parts of you. And each of those parts are equally important. Look at your venerations. Make sure you're venerating all 4. Recognize that veneration is not worship. Veneration is honor and respect for things that play a role in your reality. Our ancestors don't want to be worshipped. Nothing wants to be worshipped except the master. And who wants to be a slave to something that wants to be worshipped? Really? Being a free person, making our own choices, is much more enriching, much more empowering. It's harder, but it's much more empowering. Use the 4 meditations. Develop them. Practice them. Interpret them in your own ways. I offer consultations at a donation. When you get stumped, come ask me. Or go ask somebody else that you truly trust. But make sure that they have the experience, that they've done their 11 years and they actually have learned something about themselves first. Because if you're getting your answers from somebody who's only a page or 2 in front of you, or maybe a page or 2 behind you, then you're both wandering around in the dark without a light, without any way of actually being able to see. Break the indoctrination that we suffer from because of language. Go find a source to learn the true meanings and uses of rhetoric, logic, and grammar. They're known as the trivium. They're super powerful and they're super important because it is through language liberal arts that we think and that we manifest our reality. Remember, all of the Hermetic laws basically say what we say, think, believe, and do becomes our reality. Well, we think, say, and believe in language, in logic, grammar, and rhetoric. So if our logic, grammar, and rhetoric is broken, our manifestations will also be broken. I'm always here for you. Ms. Shaw is always here for you. But nobody should be your authority on your path except you. Your ancestors made you so that you would be the authority. Their gods empowered them to make that possible. And everything else in this reality depends on you. So be the authority. No one else needs to be. This isn't grammar school, elementary school. This is life. And in life, we should each be our own ultimate authority. Go to peers and go to people who are a few days and few months and a few years ahead of you in their path. When you find a roadblock or you're uncertain of certain things, and then take their criticism as honest, healthy criticism. Don't take it as them pushing you down, because you're the ultimate authority. So what they say has no meaning unless you choose to give it meaning. Be the authority. Be the power-driven force that you're meant to be, to rule your world with your magical power and self. We love each and every one of you. I look forward to seeing you in the future. Goodbye.